Hi everyone, alright, so today we're looking at the natural minor scale, and I'll show you first how to work out what the notes are, and then I'll show you how to play it on the neck. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I've written out a C major scale, okay? Now, if you don't know how to do that, watch this other video I've made and it'll show you the theory behind that. Now, once you have the C major scale, or if you want, like, let's say, if you want the A natural minor scale, then you just write out an A major scale first. Always start with a major scale, and then I'll show you how to change it in order to get to the natural minor scale. So, C major scale here, and now the first 2 degrees are exactly the same. Okay, so in a C natural minor scale, you play C, the second degree, D, the third degree you actually lower. You lower or flatten or go down 1 semitone on, or 1 fret on a guitar or 1 key on a piano. So that becomes E flat instead of E. The fourth is exactly the same as a major scale. The fifth, the same, oh I dropped the lid. The fifth, the same as the major scale. The sixth actually gets flattened again. So that goes down 1 fret or 1 key or 1 semitone, whatever you want to call it. So it goes down from A to A flat. Now the B, the 7th degree, that is actually flattened as well. So that goes down 1 key, 1 fret, 1 semitone. And so it's B to B flat. And then the 8th degree is just the same as the first, and then that's just repeated. And that's how, taking a major scale, you turn it into a natural minor scale, and now I'll show you how to play it. The thing about this natural minor position is it's using a bit of a sort of a stretch, okay? So rather than starting the scale with your first finger, we actually start it with your second finger, okay? So second finger, starting on the 8th fret of the E string, pinky on the 10th fret of the E string, okay? Then big stretch, first finger all the way back to the 6th fret of the A string, second finger on the 8th fret of the A string, pinky on the 10th fret of the A string, first finger on the 6th fret of the D string, second finger on the 8th fret of the D string, pinky on the 10th fret of the D string. Then we drop down a string, and our first finger now goes to the 7th fret of the G string. Second finger goes onto the 8th fret of the G string. Pinky onto the 10th fret of the G string. Then down a string. Second finger on the 8th fret of the B string. Third finger on the 9th fret of the B string. And then a bit of a stretch again, but keep your second and third finger in that position. Stretch with your first finger to make the 6th fret of the high E string. Then with your second finger, play the 8th fret of the high E string. And that's the scale. I'll show you the 2 different octaves. Then the position shift. Another position. Now I'll show you a close-up. Knowledge and you'll be able to do that really quickly. So I'm going to show you a close-up of the fingerings for the natural minor scale. And remember, the natural minor scale is also the same notes that are in the Aeolian mode. And so this means once you learn the natural minor scale, you actually know the Aeolian mode, or vice versa, okay? So the only difference between this scale and all the other scales we've done so far is instead of starting with our first finger on the C note, because we're going to do a C natural minor, we actually do a bit of a stretch in this one, and we start with our second finger. Okay, so second finger on the 8th fret of the low E string, that's the C note. Pinky on the 10th fret of the E string. Down a string, bit of a stretch, but keep that same position. First finger on the 6th fret of the A string. Second finger on the 8th fret of the A string. Pinky on the 10th fret of the A string. First finger on the 6th fret of the D string. Second finger on the 8th fret of the D string. Pinky on the 10th fret of the D string. So the whole sort of scale is revolving around this shape where you use your first finger, your second, and your pinky, and you do a stretch, a fret stretch between each finger. It may take a little bit of time to get used to because it's a little bit of a stretch. But if you're a rock or a sort of a blues guy, a lot of your scales will be playing 3 notes per string, so it's really a good skill to have just to get used to those stretching. Now you move your first finger, you're not going to play another 6th fret, you're going to start with a 7th fret of the G string, 2nd finger on the 8th fret of the G string, pinky on the 10th fret of the G string, drop down a string, 2nd finger on the 8th fret of the B string, 3rd finger on the 9th fret of the B string, and then stretch again down onto the E string, but you're going to stretch 1 fret back onto the 6th fret of the E string, but you're going to keep the rest of your hand in that position, okay? So second last note is 1st finger stretching back, 6th fret of the high E string, then last note, 2nd finger on the 8th fret of the high E string. So the only trick to this scale is there's a couple of big sort of stretches in there, but as long as you mainly keep your fingers locked in that 7th position, so you stretch out for the last 2 notes, but then you come back in for the next string, and then you stretch out going back down. So just have a look at the tab and replay this video a few times and you'll get it easy. Now with this example, I chose to change a C major scale and then make it into a C natural minor scale, but because there's no sharps or flats, we didn't have to really change anything, we just had to lower anything. But if you had, for example, let's say that 3rd degree, let's say that was maybe, just for argument's sake, maybe it was an A sharp. Okay, so that 3rd degree, that scale now no longer makes sense, but if that 3rd degree was an A sharp and you had to flatten it, you take that sharp down a semitone and it would turn it into A, so you'd flatten it. That's how that would make sense. Well done guys, you've learnt the natural minor scale, and remember the best thing about all of these scale sort of patterns that I show you is once you know the one pattern, so once you know the natural minor scale pattern, you actually know all the natural minor scales that there are, okay? So if you start with your 2nd finger on the C note, so that's the 1st note of the scale that you play, then it's going to be a C natural minor scale. Whereas if you start again with your 2nd finger on an A note, the 5th fret of the low E string, you're going to get an A natural minor scale. So here's the C natural minor scale. And starting on an A note, it's the A natural minor scale. Now to start off with, of course, start playing the scales up and down, all the way up and down, back and forth, so you've got that pattern just absolutely memorized and you know all the scale degree numbers because you've watched the theory. But then once you've sort of done that for a little while, just start messing around with the scale and just keep within all the notes of the scale, but try different fingerings, try soloing over a backing track or just soloing by yourself, or try and create melodies or riffs using that scale, and it'll just help to get sort of lodged in your mind.